Ah! Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Amusement Adventures, the series where I document my day at a park, reviewing the rides I rode, the food I ate, and even the journey to get there. I will cover it all, and in this terrifying episode, I'm going to the one and only Knott's Scary Farm, the original theme park haunt located at the wonderful Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. So, strap in, because this is going to be one blood-curdling adventure. After I took a shower, I headed outside where my dad had made pancakes for breakfast.
What an absolutely gorgeous morning here at my grandparents' house. Don't try to sneak away from me. Oh, he's hiding. Come out, deliver. Oh, there he is.
It was indeed a lovely day down at my grandparents' house where we were staying. Pretty soon, a car pulled into our driveway. Who was in the car? Well, it was Joel, who you might remember from my first Amusement Adventures episode, and also his wife December. And, just like that, we were off on our journey to Scary Farm. We could see Knott's in the distance, beckoning us to come nearer like a creepy haunted house on a hill. Needless to say, we were all pretty spooked out to approach the park, but we would have to wait for a while to enter Scary Farm itself. You see, since we all have passes to the park, we decided to go to Spooky Farm during the day as well as Scary Farm at night, so we entered the park while the sun was still high, ready for an awesome day. The park was dead for Spooky Farm.
Man, I'm dead.
And the people there were mostly families with some little kids in very cute costumes, trick-or-treating around Ghost Town. Since it was lunchtime when we first got there, our first stop was Wilderness Broiler to get something to eat. I got the witch's fingers with Cubano flavors. They were fries topped with ham, cheese sauce, mustard, and pickles, and they were so good. Definitely a 9 out of 10. After that, we spent the rest of the afternoon enjoying the low crowds, getting on some rides, including the Halloween overlay for a Calico Mine ride, the Calico Candy Mine, where we journeyed into the Candy Mine to meet the mystical Pink Fairy.
Welcome, brave explorers. I am the Pink Fairy. You've reached the heart of my candy mine, and just in time for my candy.
Yeah, I definitely don't trust her, and you bet I'm not taking any of that candy. Overall, I thought the Calico Candy Mine ride was an awesome addition to the spooky/scary farm lineup. You can tell the park put a lot of effort into the overlay, and at the end of the day, it's really just fun. For dinner, we had the same ribs me and Cosmic got when we went to the park back in the last Amusement Adventures episode, which is definitely an episode you should check out if you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts on the rides and coasters in the park. So was my first Amusement Adventures episode. Pretty soon, though, we had to leave the park while it was gruesomely transforming, just like I did this morning. From the tame spooky farm into the horrifying scary farm. And as the sun set brilliantly behind the Knott's skyline, we felt the adrenaline began to rise as the inevitability of entering the fog rapidly approached, and even though we had just left Spooky Farm, we knew the real spooks were about to come.
Let's do it.
After entering into the park, we walked straight into the park's most famous scare zone, Ghost Town Streets. This scare zone, in my opinion, is the best in the whole park. After all, it is the original. The fog in this scare zone is insanely dense, and combined with the old western buildings of Ghost Town, it gives an incredibly unique and spooky vibe. Ghost Town Streets is genuinely incredible and easily the cornerstone of the entire event. Ghost Town Streets easily scores a 10 out of 10. We continued to walk through the scare zone until we reached what would be our first maze of the day, the Grimoire. The Grimoire is genuinely fantastic. The pre-show was incredible, and it was so cool to see a Scary Farm pre-show last past the first night. And this maze has some of the most clever and creative transitions I've seen in a maze. I loved the first tent transition, but my favorite had to be the fridge transition. This goes without saying for all of Knott's mazes, but the set design of this maze is just incredible. Some of these rooms really feel like you have been transported back to the 50s with the black and white aesthetic. But my favorite parts of the maze are the parts that take place in the woods. Overall, Grimoire scores a 9 out of 10, the perfect way to start out the night. The next maze we decided to hit up was right across the way from Grimoire, and that was Origin's Curse of Calico. This maze is absolutely insane. I love all the Ghost Town Easter eggs sprinkled throughout, and the set design is just ridiculous. The one room with a full-on mini ghost town is out of this world impressive, and the Flying Witch is one of the coolest scares in the whole park. My favorite part of the maze, though, has to be the tribute to the Haunted Shack. As a Knott's history buff, this little tribute is one of the coolest things I have ever seen. Origin scores a 10 out of 10. Absolutely incredible in every way, from the historical Easter eggs to the absolutely insane set design. After Origins, we decided to walk across the park to get to our next maze, but to do that, we had to pass through 2 more scare zones. The first scare zone we passed through on our journey to the next maze was the Goring 20s. I love this scare zone. It's so lively and there's so much to see. They have live music playing from the balcony of the Walter Knott Theater. That's advertising for the speakeasy known as the Blind Tiger that was selling the Devil's Elixir itself. This scare zone is simply wonderful, and it fits perfectly in the Memory Lane section of the park. Goring 20s scores an 8 out of 10. The next of the 2 scare zones was the infamous Carnival. This scare zone is definitely fun, and I can't see any other type of scare zone working in this area of the park. But I do think it's my least favorite of the park's scare zone. It feels the least unique and the least eerie since there are so many lights. Needless to say, it was still a lot of fun and there were some good scares. Carnival scores a 7 out of 10. After passing through Carnival, we approached our next maze. We could see the Big Top approaching as we were about to witness a horrifying collection of sideshow buffoonery in Mesmer. Mesmer is an awesome maze. I love all the funhouse effects, like the tilted room, the mirror room, and the swaying room, as well as the really trippy vibe this maze gives. My favorite part of the whole maze has to be the massive animatronic at the end of the maze. It was genuinely so impressive. Mesmer scores a 9 out of 10 for its trippy atmosphere and funhouse vibes. The next maze we were itching to try was Dark Ride, and I quite enjoyed this maze. It for sure needed more scare actors than there were, but overall, I loved the theme. And that's really the consistent thing with the Scary Farm mazes. They all have absolutely incredible set design. Dark Ride's creepy abandoned ride theme is honestly awesome. The glitchy effects and the music really fit the theme of the Carnival Scare Zone. Dark Ride scores a 7 out of 10. After Dark Ride, we decided to take a break from mazes and take a ride on Halloween Hootenanny. While waiting in line for the Log Ride's Halloween overlay, we saw this awesome creature in the nearby Midway Games stall.
Rockfish!
And pretty soon, the line was over, and we were hopping on this incredibly charming Halloween overlay. Halloween Hootenanny is an awesome overlay, and in my opinion is the best seasonal ride overlay I have ever been on. I love all the new figures they add to the ride. I also love the appearance of the Green Witch herself. Halloween Hootenanny is so much fun and an absolute must-ride at Knott's Scary Farm. Halloween Hootenanny scores a 9 out of 10. After our haunting ride on Timber Mountain, we decided to finish off the rest of the mazes we had left to do. But first, we needed a snack, so we got some Philly cheesesteak top tots, and they were amazing, definitely scoring a 9 out of 10, before hopping in line for the new maze, Bloodline 1847. Bloodline is definitely a really cool concept, and it can't be understated just how insane the set design is of this maze. The rooms are absolutely massive and they are beautifully constructed. However, the gimmick of this maze, the guns, really do feel like a gimmick. It's nearly impossible to tell if you're hitting someone or what monsters you can even hit. Plus, they're packing so many people in this maze that it gets so congested and all the monsters you see have already been shot. The whole shooting aspect of this maze really fell flat for me, which is not great when it's supposed to be the main draw of your maze. Bloodline looks gorgeous, but the poorly executed shooting aspect brings this maze down to a 7 out of 10. Next up was Dark Entities, and this maze was also just okay. Don't get me wrong, it really did have some awesome effects and, like all the other mazes, great set design, but there were just not enough scare actors to really make this one memorable. Dark Entities also gets a 7 out of 10. The next maze, however, was the Depths, and this maze is genuinely awesome. The theme of a flooded mine with terrifying sea creatures is just so creative and original, and I love the water effect room. That's genuinely one of the coolest effects I've ever seen. The rocking ship and the Kraken animatronic are also just so incredibly well executed. The Depths easily scores a 9 out of 10. Next up was Waxworks, and this was also a very well designed maze. I really liked the bee room as well as the wax vent room. The only annoying thing about this maze were the insane amount of things hanging from the ceiling. It got quite exhausting brushing them out of the way constantly. Whether it was curtains or dead bodies, it just got a little annoying. Other than that, though, Waxworks was a very enjoyable maze, scoring an 8 out of 10. And last but most certainly not least, there was Pumpkin Eater.
Locked her in a pumpkin shell, and there he kept her very well.
I absolutely adore this maze. The Pumpkin Guts room is so creative, and I love how genuinely Halloweeny this maze feels. I wish it had the amount of scare actors it deserved, though. Other than that, Pumpkin Eater was honestly one of my favorites, and I'm very, very sad to hear that it's most likely the last year at the farm for this maze. Pumpkin Eater scores a 9 out of 10. It is definitely one of my favorites. And with that, we had completed all the mazes in the park. Here's my final ranking of all the mazes. And since we had finished all the mazes, we decided to spend the rest of the night walking around, enjoying the scare zones we had not visited yet. The next scare zone we visited was the Hollow, and this is a awesome scare zone. Something about it just felt so Halloweeny with the orange lighting and the creepy forest monsters. It was a genuinely terrifying scare zone with some incredible scare actors.
Oh, nice! That was a good one.
The Hollow scores a 9 out of 10. We then straight into the only scare zone we hadn't yet visited, Forsaken Lake. This was also a really neat scare zone that had an insane amount of fog and some really unique costumes. Forsaken Lake scores an 8 out of 10. After Forsaken Lake, we did a lot of walking around the other scare zones we had already been to, but we mainly stuck to Ghost Town streets. We also saw part of the incredible show La Magnifique Carnival du Grotesque.
Oh, the horror!
Oh, that's awesome.
is on purpose. Oh!
And soon after that, the Green Witch called her minions of horror away from the streets of Ghost Town, signaling the end of our frightening visit to Not Scary Farm. Thank you all so much for watching this blood-curdling episode of Amusement Adventures. If you want to check out more of my content, I have a playlist for my Amusement Adventures episodes, where you can see all the other episodes I've posted. You can also check out my series 0 Credits and Counting, which now has 2 episodes. And make sure to stay tuned because I have some very special content in the works. But until then, have a happy Halloween.